Hello, hello. Happy Friday. So hopefully everybody's feeling great. It's the end of the week. And if you are joining us live or will be joining us live, just say hello. If you have any questions, you can always post them. And this is Julia with Be Well Fitness. And today I have a special guest, Coach Amanda. And she is amazing. She's so passionate about nutrition, education. She also works with women 40 plus, just like I do. And I know I don't touch on nutrition because it's such a huge subject. Also, knowing the body mechanics, it's another huge subject. So that's why I like to partner up with people like Amanda. And I love her message because she's all about freedom, freedom, freedom. Yes, free up our mind, free up our spirit, and then we are unstoppable. Yes. Well, and I will give a few words to Amanda to kind of introduce herself so that she will tell us her story briefly, and then we can go into all the nitty gritty stuff. Okay, Amanda, it's your turn. Tell us, how did you get where you are?
Thank you. First, thank you for having me. I love that we got to be connected, and I just really appreciate getting to talk with you and your followers too. So I'm Amanda. I am 45 now, and at 43, all of a sudden for me, I felt like I had lost myself. I was unwell, and I had never been that person. I was usually very energized, very high achieving, um, very happy. And it was, one day I was actually in my laundry room, and I just had this aha moment where I was like, I'm frustrated and tired all the time. I'm out of energy. I am falling asleep on the couch in the afternoon. And again, that's not me. I don't do naps. So I thought, maybe it's because I'm getting older. Why don't I talk to my doctor, gynecologist, see if we can figure out what's going on? Maybe there's something I should do differently. Because also, I was gaining weight, and I couldn't figure out why, because I was exercising more and more and more. Because that's what I grew up learning was, and like if you grew up at the same time as me, you probably heard that. Well, exercise is how you lose weight. So I was exercising an extra day, added on a Saturday. I was at the gym all the time. And that was doing nothing but making me more tired. And then I was gaining belly fat, which I'd never had before. So I went to my doctor, gynecologist, and they're like, oh no, this is normal. This is just how it is in your 40s because of your hormones. There's nothing you can do.
But if you know Amanda, she does not accept things like that, right?
Well, at first I thought, okay, I guess I'll hang in there. But always in the back of my mind, I said, and it did luckily for me, I came to a point where I honestly was so tired and just depressed in the morning. I had trouble. I wasn't getting out of bed. My husband was kind of taking over getting my kids to school. And I said, this is the tipping point. Like, I have to figure something out for myself. And so, like probably many of us do still, I thought, what if I just lose the weight? Maybe I'll feel better. Maybe that's all this is. Mm-hmm. So I found this program called The Faster Way to Fat Loss. And with the name, normally I would never have given it a chance because I was like, the last thing I need is one more diet to fail at and feel bad about. Like, I kind of knew diets aren't the answer anymore. Mm-hmm. But the woman who was sharing about it was someone that I knew, and she was my age. She had just had a baby. She'd just been remarried. And so I said, okay, we're going to give it a go. And 2 weeks in, thank goodness I tried it, because it turned out it was very educational about learning what was really in your food, and nothing to do with counting calories, all about understanding, the major molecules of what we need to eat to stay well, and so much learning. And I just fell in love with it, and my body fell in love with it. It was what turned out. It was just how you should be eating to take great care of yourself after 40. I learned a lot of new things about exercise there, which I'm sure, and getting to listen to you ring true with what you're saying. I learned, stop doing all that cardio, learn to do strength training. And it just changed everything for me. And so I said, this is what I'm going to do now, is share this with other women. Because what if other women are going to their doctor and gynecologist the same as I am and being told the same thing? and they're not lucky enough to stumble on a solution like this.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And we just kind of have to, yes, be our own advocates and find those solutions and talk to other women and at least listen and make our own conclusions, because I also specialize on pelvic floor health. And that's what I hear a lot. And before, when I didn't know any better, I didn't know there was a problem. But then when I knew and opened my eyes, and then my clients started to share their story, and basically the answer they were hearing from the medical community was also very similar. Well, you had your children, it's like you're punished, so you're supposed to pee when you jump. Or yes, or now you're over 40, so you're going through hormonal changes. And yes, all of that, of course, it makes a difference. Yes, we cannot deny that. Let's take that into consideration. But when I tell them, well, there is a pelvic floor physical therapist, you can start there. And I work with one and I can recommend. And then after that, when you're ready to transition to exercising and strength training, we can put another layer on top. And just by talking to them and explaining the mechanics of breathing, that can make a huge difference. And I am blown away just how breathing can be so powerful. So I think it's great that you took charge and you didn't want to accept it. And now it's your own journey. And it also became your business. And now you're educating and inspiring other women. So we'll be talking where you can find Amanda, but you definitely have to check her out because she has so much passion and she's definitely educational. And that's what I love, because I don't want another diet. And I don't want to send my clients to people who just say diet, 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 because I'm also all about lifestyle. And I think that's what I'm going to lead to next, because I look at movement as nutrition as well. So I often say nutritious movement. And whoever works with me, that's how I always explain to them. Look at it like food, because we all understand there are those macros, which we'll be talking about in a moment. So in the movement world, I also call macros those big, big movement. Mm-hmm. Like squatting, like hinging, like pushing and pulling, and all those micro movements. It's all those accessory. Okay, let's do our triceps, let's do our biceps, let's do our quads, so that they help us perform those big movements, those macro movements. And then a lot of times my clients love when I start saying, okay, we're going to be learning movement snacks, because who doesn't want to not devote extra time and move throughout the day? So I always come up with ideas. Okay, movement snack homework. So, and of course, the other big component of that is actual nutrients, what we put inside of our body. And I know it's very popular nowadays, count your macros and all that macros. So can you please clarify to us, how do you look at macros from your food perspective? And is it important to count macros?
That's wonderful. What a good connection to talk about the big movements versus the micro movements, because that's exactly, if macros, when it comes to food, have not made sense yet, that's a perfect analogy. There's 3 big molecules our body needs to stay alive. There's micronutrients we need that are smaller molecules, like vitamin C, that we want as well to be well. But the 3 big molecules we need to be alive are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And for me, they have been a bridge from using food for a lot of things that weren't fuel, like as a coping tool. And I was an emotional eater growing up, raised in a household of overeaters. Like, we didn't have any way of dealing with emotions. We just ate. And so I knew once I was older, I was like, this isn't serving me, but I'm not sure how to change it or what else to do. And just by chance, because of that faster way to fat loss program, using macronutrients and keeping track of them, knowing how many you need to feel full, to be nourished, that education I got around those brought me over from using food for emotion stuff to this place where I was like, oh, you can use food for a fuel and feel really well, and very stable and strong. Like you talk about how you train women to use macro movements to feel stable and strong. I was using these macros and keeping track of them and having enough, because what I learned and what's true for most of the women I get to work with is we're not eating enough carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. We're eating a lot of other processed things that don't really give us nutrition. But when I started eating enough of those, then I found this, what I call food freedom, where I was using food as fuel. And then I had this space to learn other ways to cope with emotions, other ways to feel confident, all kinds of other opportunities and doors opened. It was so interesting. It was just so interesting that I was like, who would have thought something that's kind of sounds like calorie counting, and it doesn't sound like freedom at first at all. Keep track and how many grams and all these things. Did eventually lead to that, because it kind of taught me, oh, well, these are healthy portions for my body. And when my body, I learned the science that was like, oh, when your body gets the carbs, proteins, and fats in the combination that you need every time you eat, that lets your insulin work better with your blood sugar, and everything in your body gets what it needs, and you feel better. So that is what I coach when I coach around nutrition. I do say you don't have to do this forever, but it's kind of like learning to play the piano or learning to dance. Like if you take your time really getting your handle on these basics, these macros, then eventually you are like, okay, I know what I need. I can form a meal that's appropriate portions and brings in the pieces that I need. And then you don't have to always be doing that tracking. But for me, I've seen it be just a super powerful tool.
Are you still tracking your macros since you've been now doing it for a while and kind of know your portions? Still doing it?
What I do now, I still do. But what I saw for myself was probably a year into it. I said, you know what I noticed is I have these go-to meals. But I know when I have my oatmeal, about the portion that I need, it's like a cup of cooked oatmeal, and then one banana on there, about a tablespoon of almonds or whatever nuts or fats I want in there. And that's what I need for where my body is now, and that's where I feel good. And so I have those just go-to meals that I don't need to track macros about anymore, because I know that they serve me. When I do have like try out new meals, new recipes, because I do a lot of meal planning now too. I have to be mindful around food. I'll track the macros of that new meal so I know what I'm getting. Because what's interesting, I've noticed, I don't know too many people who are really good at portions with their eyes. It's very interesting. Even women like me who help coach with macros, will talk and they'll say, you know, it's so interesting. I still get out the food scale sometimes. I still track the macros of meals sometimes, because we humans aren't that great at seeing the portion and knowing what we need if we don't have some frame of reference, some tool. And that, I think those macrograms, they're kind of a frame of reference, a tool. But yeah, you know, this is almost 2.5 years that I've been doing it. So now I can do a lot less tracking just because I have strategies. And that's another piece I teach my clients, because I don't think anyone wants macro tracking as a permanent lifestyle. So I teach those strategies of, how can we develop go-to meals? How can you know, start to have meals on your meal plan that you know work for your family and that you know work for your needs, your nutrition needs, and then you don't always have to be tracking.
Yes, and when you experiment and do have kind of like that library of go-to meals, you definitely, you know, might skip some days or a week because you already have all that history behind you can rely on. So that's what I was also thinking. That's kind of like very similar how I approach the physical body, because I a lot of times work with the beginners, just like probably you are in that sense. And I always tell them, well, we're going to be learning the alphabet of movement. So that when we learn the alphabet, we can make words. When we make words, we can make sentences. When we make sentences, we can have stories. So because the alphabet is going to stay the same of all those components of the movements, But from that, I can add this, I can add that, just like making that recipe of that go-to meal. And that's my story. Now I have so many stories and I can pick it out and say, this is what we'll do. And oh yeah, that's what needs to go there. This macronutrient, this micronutrient, plus this dessert on top. So, and yes, when we have that library of stories of those movements and strength training sessions we've done, so it feels more confident, it feels more comfortable, it feels more warm and nurturing because I know how to do it. I've done both meals before. So, and I love the concept. Yes, so you learn just like alphabet, and then go-to meals become your comfortable experience when you don't want to think, when you don't want to experiment. But even if when you do, you can kind of pick up from those go-to meals and make your own. So knowing those ingredients and macros and things like that. So that's great. And also, as you know, in the fitness world, that intermittent I can never say that word.
The mouthful.
Say that, please. Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
Yes. It's just like so hard to say. So it's very popular. And I know I've listened to a few podcasts, and it just depends on who you listen. And some say, it's good for women, it's not good for women, or whatever it is. So I never know which one is true. So what do you think?
Well, I think my overall thinking for us women after 40 is I want strategies that work with my body instead of against it, and that are smarter, not harder. So like those go-to meals, like the library kind of idea. So with under that, if something fits under that umbrella, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to think about it. And what I noticed with intermittent fasting, because that is a piece absolutely of that Fast Away group, the Fast Away to Fat Loss that I coach, is that it can be a strategy that works for most people, but you've got to view it like that it's just another tool in the toolbox. There's no, well, I was going to say there's no one magic pill out there. I do believe in whole food as a magic pill. I believe in food as medicine. So I should say that. But intermittent fasting isn't a magic pill. It's just, maybe it's a tool that would serve you. And I do notice that, again, if you're coming from a background of perhaps overeating, chronic overeating, emotional eating, for some people under that umbrella, intermittent fasting can be a cool chance to give yourself a window to unlearn that, because it impacts your biology and your habits. It's working on your metabolism, your brain, and also your habits at home of when you're eating. So it can kind of be a multitasker, but it's not for everyone. I've had some clients who've come in and tried it with me, and they say, this just made me feel too restricted, or like I was watching the clock. I wasn't able to, when I was hungry. And I said, yeah, then this isn't for you. Yeah. And I always teach it with a caveat that it is a silly thing to be doing if you're not willing to balance it out with understanding how to eat enough whole food nutrition.
Yes. Because it is about style of life. So because, yes, if you just do it, whatever, how many hours would you suggest doing it then? Or is it a whole day? Or?
In general, for a person in average health, and us women are in our 40s, 40s, 50s, 60s, because there's even a tiny bit of research, like this much, about women our age and intermittent fasting, that they can tolerate longer fasts. I'd say 16 hours is a real common average, accessible to many people starting place. Now, if you're thinking, and most of that I do when I'm asleep. So real quick, I'll finish dinner by 6:30 at night, and then I'll eat the next day at 11. So I go a tiny bit over 16 hours. So I kind of skip breakfast. I have clients though who come in, they're clearly in adrenal fatigue. Based on their symptoms, or they're even coming saying, I have a thyroid medication I take. So there are some instances where intermittent fasting, which is a stress on the body, just like exercise, would be, it's another layer of stress on top of their already too stressed system. And that's a lot of women over 40, especially in that 40-50 time when you're still raising kids, working full time, just so much stress. So I work with those clients to say, okay, then your time of fasting is going to be much shorter than 16 hours. Because it just
yes, like you have to, yeah. So you have to start somewhere and just try it out. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that it's not for everyone, and you definitely have to listen to your body. So it's challenging. And I guess, yeah, like for myself, I always think, oh, like I'm not really good at that, really. But the way I look at it, it's like, well, I'm eating healthy, I'm exercising fine. It's like, do I really need to do it? So, but maybe one day I'll try it. I know I can hold on to that if I'm distracted enough. So if I'm just out and about and getting busy, then it's a little easier. And basically, like I've been eating one apple a day since I was a child. That's been my habit. And because I also come from a different culture, I don't really have like, those habits that people have here because I was not brought up on fast food restaurants and go out every time or things like that. So that's why I always say, like, what's the big deal? Eat at home, control your portions, eat an apple a day. That's it. But when you already have been, used and exposed to this other food choices, I know it's challenging and there's brain reaction and emotions and things like that. So yes, but yeah, that's kind of my challenge. One day I'll try it. So yeah, and I think that what you mentioned about your story, and that's obviously that time of the age for women, hormones. So yeah, that's a big subject, and hormones affect everything. It's going to affect intermittent fasting. It's going to affect your food. It's going to affect your exercising. It's going to affect your mood. So what do you do about that in your coaching, if anything?
Well, I have a personal soft spot in my heart for the power of nutrition around hormones because about 2 months, well, actually 2 weeks into using intermittent fasting, balancing it with eating the whole food nutrition and eating enough, I felt like someone had given me a magic pill. And in hindsight, I learned my hormones were just finally getting what they needed. I was getting, enough carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And so my insulin was happy. Insulin is our master hormone. Insulin is a hormone. It goes to work every time we eat. And so it was getting so happy and balanced. All my other hormones were like, finally, some happy balance around here. And I felt like a new person. So I say, what a foundational, wonderful place to start after 40 is to learn to focus on your whole foods. Start to understand, are you getting carbohydrates, proteins, and fats? Let's start to look for where they even come from. Are you eating anywhere near enough? Learn to exercise smarter, not harder, like you coach, with little less cardio and shifting in more strength training. And those pieces of the puzzle will do so much for your hormones. You will feel so much better. And that's I do a little education in my Fast Away groups around the role of hunger hormones and satiety hormones that help you feel full. We talk a little bit about cortisol, stress hormone, some people call it, or the energizing hormone, and its role in fat loss, sleep, stress. So we touch on all of those things because they're just inextricably tied to your wellness and your fat loss. And so, especially as women after 40, here's what I've noticed, and this happened to me. We can be doing all these great pieces with our food and our exercise and feeling pretty good, but we can kind of come up against a wall when it comes to hormones. And that's actually how I've connected with you, because I wound up, even with all my great eating and exercise, which set a great foundation, having all this trouble getting enough sleep. And my hormones were so out of balance. I went to the Happy Hormone Cottage.
Yes.
And you had Lynn Hogrief from the Happy Hormone Cottage speak on one of your lives not too long ago. I am one of her clients and use bioidentical hormones. So it's a subject near and dear to my heart, just because I've seen firsthand, I've experienced the wellness they bring, and then if we don't have them in balance and we need them, the dramatic impact they have on our wellness if we don't have what we need. So
yeah, it's huge. It's a huge subject. And yes, if you want to watch the previous videos, you will see Lynn, and she's wonderful at educating about hormones with Happy Hormone Cottage. And I see that some people kind of come and go. At least we got some likes. So if you're still here and joining us live, and maybe you have some questions about nutrition for women 40 plus, hormones, just let us know. We will answer the questions, or we'll get back to you later. So yes, yeah, hormones are huge. And I think because we also live in a stressed world, or the way we perceive our world. So, but a lot of times, just like you were saying, so when we get to that magic pill of whole food nutrition, of regular exercises, adding the strength training, all of that helps change our perception of the stress. And I also like to offer to my clients to just some practices of meditation, or just slow, gentle movement, focusing on breath, because breath is huge. So, and breath itself, a well-balanced breath, actually, it also balances the hormones as well, which is very important. So yeah, that's great. And maybe we can touch a little bit on what you recommend to have in terms of maybe like snacking, or maybe just kind of food before workout and after workout. What would be like your go-to choices and why you choose them?
This is a cool subject, and I've actually been talking a lot more lately I have a Facebook community called the Well Women's Community. And so we're all 40 and over, and talking about timing of protein, which people always, think, oh, I should have my protein after my workout, and the timing of protein, and even timing of your high intensity interval training workouts and food, and a little bit more research around that now that I've read and experienced myself. So what I've been doing for myself, and this isn't even so much about the food, but the timing, I do high intensity interval training 2 times a week. That's all. Less than 50 minutes, less than 50 total. And the rest is strength training that's not that high heart rate stuff. I've been making sure I do that in the morning. Like, I'll be awake for an hour to give my body time to warm up, and then I'll do that. And I feel so much better and sleep so much better at night. And then I eat a meal within about an hour after that exercise. And this is also on my strength training days, that has more protein than my other meals of the day. Like, I'm stacking my protein a little bit more in that first meal after the workout. A little bit less carbs there now that I'm 45. And some of my clients are doing this too, and noticing, wow, you feel a difference, and sleep very well at night. So it doesn't sound real breakfasty, but because of the timing of that for me, and that's my first meal, I eat animal protein. So I always say, if you only have 10 minutes to prep something, prep some protein. And so we prep chicken breasts or chicken thighs, or pork chops, or sliced pork tenderloin, and Instapot of chickpeas, because there's protein in the chickpeas. Not always be eating animal protein. And I eat soy. I consume soy. So I have some soy milk that is just soybeans and water. So some of those are always ready at our house in the fridge. Part of that meal, like within an hour after that exercise. And I feel balanced. I was feeling before real sometimes exhaustion or even nausea, just a depleted feeling. But then I started getting that timing of get that workout in the morning, eat within an hour after, and have a little more protein at that meal, I feel really well.
Yeah. Yeah, protein is huge for sure. And it's also great for recovery of all those muscles and muscular skeletal system after the workouts. What would be your like three favorite choices for your healthy carbs that you use or suggest to other women?
I have to say, well, and again, this is another piece that shifts a little bit depending on where you're starting and your age, because there's a little bit out there of the more when we're aging, even into menopause, and we have less estrogen all the time, we're going to process our carbs a little differently. So you might make different choices, but I'm 45, not in menopause. I'm still pre or perimenopause. So I love oatmeal. And as a carbohydrate, as a complex whole food carbohydrate, because it's so affordable, so shelf stable, easy to make ahead, take with you, so easy to, like we were talking about making the different stories.
Yeah,
it's so easy to put in so many different things, make it sweet, make it savory. So that's my number one carbohydrate. And then I still eat a lot of fruit. So I'd say second place is all fruits.
Okay.
But I know for some women, especially in menopause, that just doesn't serve them well anymore. A little bit too many fast digesting sugars, not enough fiber. Of the fruits, I love berries because they have a lot of fiber for a fruit.
Yeah.
So they're going to digest slower and not spike up our insulin and blood sugar. I'm going to feel more full, more satisfied, more